Now, several of us think that our best interests are served by the government. We rely on our government at our core to support us with roads, education, public transportation, defense, and numerous other things. Right? So, it would be fair to think that if there was a situation of emergency that would impact billions of people's health, the government would tell us in advance so that we could do something, take some action, or at least get prepared, right? But what if they did exactly opposite and they choose to keep it as a secret? In this video, I will tell you about the financial fabrications and deceptions that we are told so that we keep our interest in the dark about the exploitations of our economy. We might have been through an economic downturn, might have been the biggest of our century, possibly deceiving billions of people who are clinging to the fantasy that things could be better, but in reality, they cannot be. But before we start our today's video, let me introduce you to our sponsors. The book called Love, Empathy and Project Management. It's a book that will teach you about project management through real life scenarios, storytelling, and even visual representations. It's a good read and you should definitely check it out. The link is in the description. The backstory. In the 1970s, many of the Western countries saw severe inflation. The price of US dollar plummeted against the price of gold and many other elements. These consequences were significant. Guess what? The prices of each and every item and service rose very significantly. The inflation affected each and every person in the United States when it's reached a height at 1974 when it climbed over 11%. But by the end of the decade, it got even worse when it touched 14%. Due to this inflation, there was an increase in number of unemployment, bankruptcies, and for majority of people, they could not afford the cost of living. Talking about the present, people think that yes, the inflation rates are high, but they are still lower than what they were in 1970s. However, this is where the big financial deception comes into play. 0.2% might not seem a big number or a significant one to you, right? But this is the highest level of inflation that we have seen in over 31 years. Just last year, it was reported that the inflation rate in the United States is 6.2%, with most of the West not far behind. However, consider this, the folks who are supposed to look out for us and protect us are concealing the reality that the inflation rate is much higher than the official rate of 6.2%. In fact, it is actually higher than it was in 1970s. And now guys, the big financial lie. What if I told you that they can manipulate the data to hide the concerning truth? And guess what they have been doing to do so? Prior to today, the cost of a fixed basket of supermarket items was used to calculate the inflation rates. However, the US government is now able to manipulate that basket only. They can manipulate that basket to determine what are the statistics that are presented for the inflation rates. Let's say that the price of steak has risen by 10% in a single year. Okay? Now we're fairly judging that the steak has become more expensive and accounting this in their inflation calculation, they just ignore it. Now what do they after ignoring it? They substitute the steak for a much cheaper hamburger meat, which they say is essentially the same thing. But the fact is, it is not same. It's insane how far has this data manipulation extended, right? So let's do one thing and talk about something that everyone will agree on. That thing is real estate. Now, given the fact that how much it has risen in the last few years, you would probably think that the inflation rate of housing is based on the prices of real estate, right? However, the government has some other plans, the fancy ones to hide the truth. There is something the government uses that is called the owner equivalent rent. It is just a fancy way of saying that the government tells a few homeowners that what the government thinks should they rent out their places for. They have to use that number instead of hard facts. Well, according to the data, the housing market has risen by 15 to 16% over the last few years. But the government denies it and says no. It says that it has risen only by 3.9%, so it's basically false. But wait guys, what if we just disregard all these manipulations and just calculate the interest the old-fashioned way? Many of the well-known online figures have been arguing that the governments, especially in the United States, should regularly check the inflation rates, because if the calculations are correct, it is much closer to 15%, which is nowhere around 6.2 that was informed to us. If the calculations are correct, we are on the verge of the biggest financial collapse that our generation has seen. Though personally, I would not trust any media organization that is supported by the Goldman Sachs. Bad publications like The Vox want you to believe that this time the things would be different, and that there is no way what we're experiencing right now could be anything like the 1970s. The bank that almost brought down the world's financial system in 2008 financial crisis may have purposefully deceived its investor so that it can get profited in the collapse, right? So it's time for you to rethink what you are about to do. The bank that almost brought down the world's financial system in 2008 financial crisis may have purposefully deceived its investor so that it can get profited from the collapse, right? So it's time for you to think about what you are going to do to get protected if you are seriously going to suffer from a significant glitch in the economy. And finally, the solution. If the inflation rate is really near 15%, that means in about 5 years, half of your savings would be gone. I don't mean that you will spend it. The same amount of money would be there, but in 5 years, you would only be able to buy half the stuff. I do believe that having a little bit of cash in hand is probably wise for emergencies. But if we have a severe recession on the horizon, I would seriously advise against it. Now, significantly, there are two things that you can do. Firstly, you would want to secure a portion of your wealth in precious metals like gold and silver and put them in vaults around the world. You can just start investing in silver at just $23 per ounce in coin cities available at major cities. Now, if you want to hold a larger position, you would have to invest more. That is when you have to consider vaults around the world. For example, use Gold Avenue, which is a great option for Europeans as they have the Swiss vaults. Secondly, you have to invest in cryptocurrencies because cryptocurrencies have higher interest rates than any other bank. If there is a potential recession on the horizon, it would hit the big cities first. The self-sufficient communities who can grow their own food and can support each other can weather the financial crashes like this better than the people who are relying on everything that they need for their survival to be delivered to them. Guys, this was it for today. Now I hope you know the inflation rate and the government not always serves in our best interest. We can't be blind and keep following. We have to be rational. We'll meet soon in the next video with more such content. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. This was Ujjwal Singla signing off.